starting with the frame, the very first thing I'm going to do is put the hammer and the hammer strut where they're supposed to go, and you can see where the holes match up. For right now, the most important thing I want to worry about is putting the hammer into that opening right there in the frame, or the hammer strut, sorry. Can you see that? I hope you can. Just so it sits inside there, and then the strut is pushed in, like so. That's how I want to position it. The next thing I'm going to grab is the So you position everything like so, with the ejector pointed down. You take your safety, you put it through the ejector and the hammer together. You may need to kind of adjust how everything sits, just so the safety fits through. Make sure that the ejector is facing down when you're doing this. Otherwise you're going to damage your safety. There you go. Alright, that's how you do that. So make sure that the safety pin goes all the way through and that the hammer sits on it, and rotate the ejector up. When you've done that, we're going to take the sear spring, which looks like that, and you'll see that on one side this tab sticks out. Can you see that? This tab faces forward when in frame, and it actually sits inside that little opening right there. So what we're going to do is, I'm trying to position my hand so I can drop the hammer and hold it in place. Let's see how well that works. Oh, it doesn't work at all. So I'll show you this way. What you want to do is, when positioning the spring, you want to drop the hammer so that this spring collapses, and then allows for you to put the sear spring in to its place. So it sits like that. Let's lower the hammer again. First put the top of the spring in, then the bottom, so it fits like that, and drop the hammer. And now the sear spring is in place. Let's put the extractor back, or ejector back, where it's supposed to go. With this sear spring, you see how I'm pushing on it? What you want to do is grab your sear, and hopefully you can see that this is a wide side and this is a narrow side. The narrow side goes up. The wide side needs to go, sorry, I need to fix my ejector again. The wide side needs to go over the spring in such fashion, and under the ejector. I'm trying to do it without looking. So here, that's how it's supposed to sit. All you need to do is make sure that the sear hole lines up, and put the pin through the sear, like so. Alright. Now make sure that this pin goes all the way through, but that it doesn't protrude inside this rail. Simply by touch, make sure that it doesn't protrude, because that's where the slide rides. Now you can try the hammer, and it should work. Okay, the sear should hold it in place. And if you want to drop the hammer, all you need to do is just depress on the inside. You see how the sear comes up on the back and allows the hammer to move forward. So that works and we know that it works. Now we can basically reattach our grips. So all of that is now functioning, and the grips are on. Next thing we're going to do is take our magazine release retainer and its spring, put the retainer through the spring or into the spring, and put the retainer into the mag release in such a way that this little tab on top can fit into this channel. Then you're going to choose a correct bit screwdriver, push the tab in and turn it so that the retainer catches right here. Now you're going to drop this in, and you need to turn the retainer back, but make sure that you are pushing the magazine release up just very slightly, making sure that this retainer goes into its spot, into its proper place. When it does, the entire magazine release will be pushed to the other side, and you're going to have spring tension on it. Alright, that's that. Now we're going to need to reassemble our trigger and its components. What I like to do is pre-load the pins. As you can see here, the pins are already inside the trigger. What I'm going to do is take the spring, the trigger spring, place it into its place right here where it's supposed to go, like so, and put the pin all the way through that right away. So the spring is supposed to be positioned this way. Hope you can see that. When you have the trigger or magazine release in place, make sure that it faces up, okay? Push it in all the way, or as far as maybe a couple of millimeters away from the trigger, as you can see here, and then push the pin in all the way, and it should retain this magazine release safety or magazine safety. So now that you've got this assembled, the trigger, the magazine safety, and the trigger spring, now what we're going to do is put it back in to the frame. You start with this, with the top of the trigger or the front of the trigger. Put that in first, then make sure that you depress magazine safety, and it should allow your trigger to sit in kind of like that. Once it's in like this way, what you want to do is put this lever in and kind of force it into its proper place. Or I shouldn't say force it, because I'm not really forcing it. You just want to put it in to where it's supposed to be. So I just moved that spring out of the way. So it's kind of there. Not really how it's supposed to be, but right there, okay? Now it's in place, and you see that spring is sitting over it, basically. And that's exactly what I want. So now I'm going to rotate the trigger up, push it all the way forward, okay, and rotate it up. And when it's here, I want to make sure that this little bar goes into its proper place, which is this channel right here. And I want to absolutely make sure that the spring for the trigger sits in the frame and not out of the frame. And Right now I'm just trying to move it where it's supposed to be. There you go. So that's how the trigger is supposed to be positioned. Now I need to make sure that everything is in its proper place, and I'm going to put the pin in that retains the trigger. You can worry about this a little bit later. I'll grab that pin, and this pin has a tapered side, and the tapered side will put through the trigger from this side. Let's make sure that everything is lined up, which it's not right now. Okay, maybe like so. Tapered side in, push it all the way through. You can use a soft handle of your screwdriver or something like that to drive the pin all the way in, so it comes from this side. And now we're just going to do a quick check, make sure that our assembly is done correctly. Now it's definitely assembled correctly. All I needed to do was just apply a little bit of pressure on the magazine release right here, and that put the bar in its proper place. So that's in now. The frame is now completely assembled, so we're going to let it sit, and we'll move on to the slide and all of its components. The very first thing we're going to put back in, let me zoom you out real quick. Very first thing we're going to put back in is this lever. This lever has this little protrusion on one side, and this protrusion is going to go towards the back of the slide, and it's actually going to be facing us when we put it back in. What we need to make sure we do is that when we put it back in, that we line up the hole with that side hole that this little plate will go through. So once we know that it's lined up, we're going to put the plate in, and it's going to retain that bar. Once we've done that, and to retain this plate in its place, what we need to do is put the extractor back in. You can see the claw of the extractor. It goes towards the center of the slide. We're going to put it in, kind of line up the back here so it forms a straight line approximately. Then we're going to take our firing pin and spring, put them into where they need to go. We're going to take our retaining plate, the back plate, preload it, use something to depress the spring of the firing pin and the firing pin itself. Make sure they go in all the way. Then force the plate to go forward, and finally close the plate. When you move it all the way through, the firing pin will extend through the plate in the back, and you're now completely done with the striker side assembly, or not striker, firing pin, extractor, sorry, that little bar. This side of the slide is assembled now. What's remaining is the barrel. We're going to put that back in. We're going to take our recoil spring and guide rod. Make sure that, as you can see, this guide rod has an off-center hole here. When you're putting it back into the slide, you want to make sure that the hole goes basically towards the bottom of the, well, towards the top of the slide, I should say, because it's upside down right now. It's the bottom. So anyway, that's how it's supposed to look. Make sure that you put it back in this way instead of trying to put it back in this way. This is the incorrect way, and you can tell because the spring kind of goes down. You don't want that. What you want to do is, now it's hard to take out. Okay. What you want to do is position it this way. You can see that the guide rod kind of very nicely looks right inside this part of the slide. It's very parallel to the slide basically. Now we're gonna put the slide back over the frame, move the slide all the way back so that we can engage that safety into the rear notch, or the forward notch I should say. We're gonna take our slide stop and take down lever, put it in and make sure that it snaps in place, and it'll just lower automatically under spring pressure. Then we're gonna allow our slide to ride forward by lowering the safety. Check that everything is put together correctly. I'm going to attempt to drop the hammer, and it shouldn't work because there's no magazine in the gun. As you can see, it doesn't work. Now with my finger, I'm going to depress that magazine safety. Oh, I can't reach it. Anyway, I'm going to use the magazine, and I'm going to kind of hold the hammer and try. Okay, now it works. See, I was able to lower the hammer. Safety shouldn't engage with the hammer down. With the hammer cocked, safety engages, so that's correct. With safety on, I cannot lower the hammer even though the magazine is in the gun. So everything seems to be working correctly. There you go. The gun is now completely assembled. Thanks for watching this video, and hope you enjoyed it. Take care of your guns. Reassemble them if you haven't done so already after watching my disassembly video. And enjoy. Alright, thank you.